So there's a lot of uncertainty that is unwinding. And this particular scenario, the economic survey discusses in detail and breaks down into 3 scenarios. So much news, the 2 newspapers covering it in detail, Hindu and the Indian Express, plus so many videos coming on survey. Just to give you a brief overview के चल क्या रहा है. I'm here to give you a brief overview on what the economic survey is and how exactly this has to be covered. It's a lengthy document, 700 odd pages, interconnected pages, a huge overlap with what we have both in our prelims and the main syllabus. How we have to cover, what we have to read, how we have to read. Just a brief overview what the economic survey is bringing out so that you get a direction how exactly to go with this document. Now, what exactly is the survey talking about? We've got a brief overview. Abhi, so much news, the 2 newspapers covering it in detail, Hindu and the Indian Express, plus so many videos coming on survey. Just to give you a brief overview के चल क्या रहा है. The idea of the survey says that there was an era of hyper-globalization where efficiency was something which everyone was chasing on the terms of cost. In this particular scenario, in the last 2-3 years, what has happened is we have moved from hyper-globalization to geostrategic globalization. Number of developments post-COVID, trade sanctions, the reciprocal tariffs, the dual-use technology controls, the export controls on number of items. So there's a lot of uncertainty that is unwinding. And this particular scenario, the economic survey discusses in detail and breaks down into 3 scenarios. That what all can happen going forward in 2026. In this particular environment, what exactly is happening in the Indian economy and where has the Indian economy or what exactly are the challenges which we have to face and how exactly we are going to get out of these challenges. So this is what the whole document is premised on. And this requires a lot of understanding not just of the basics in order to give you that analysis, but also interrelating the concepts that if fiscal deficit is in control, how is it impacting the rural development, fiscal deficit not in control, how exactly it is having a particular impact on the external sector. The external sector, the FDI not coming in India or there is some reluctance, what is its impact on the growth profile of both manufacturing and services. So everything is connected in this particular environment. Now, when they say this hyper-globalization and geostrategic globalization, the shift from hyper to geostrategic, where every country is trying to manipulate and also use according to its own advantage, not entirely good for the whole world economy. In this particular context, they're talking about economic statecraft, how it has become the center. And in this particular use of economic statecraft, what is the impact here on the macroeconomy of India, which is usually they are saying in the last 1 year, we have been in a particular Goldilocks zones. That means we have had a controlled inflation, well-managed inflation. We have our deficits in control. And we also have a healthy external position. Despite the tariffs last year from US, we have been resilient to a certain extent. So the whole picture is that we have a particular environment which is uncertain and we have a particular good scenario in the country with respect to macroeconomic stability. But this stability is not something which can give us resilience further going forward. We need to work upon it. That is, structural reform is something which is required in order to build on this strength. So what they say is, already we have built resilience. Now we have to become indispensable. ये 2 कीवर्ड हैं और ये कैसे होगा? This is what is being talked about in different sectors. How do we build upon our agricultural growth? What is exactly happening in manufacturing? And how will services respond to this? So 3 things, ये जो पहले 7-8 chapters हैं, this is what the whole chapter is drawing upon. First, they talk about the problems, uncertain environment, the improvement in India with respect to its macroeconomics, how exactly we have brought all of these things in control, and further challenges which can happen in these 3 particular scenarios. In order to build upon this, we need to become indispensable for the world. How are we going to do that? We have to work on structure of the economy. The structure of the economy, they talk about the things in agriculture sector, how crop-led development we need, not the area coverage, but we need productivity enhancing reforms. India is world largest producer in number of items, but we hardly have 1 to 2% of the total agriculture exports in the world. What is the biggest blockchain here? What is the biggest blockade here is the productivity-led enhancement, what we are not getting. There are other sectors in agriculture which are growing well, the allied sectors, both fisheries and the livestock sector. How it is going good and what exactly needs to be done more in order to bring agriculture at par with other sectors. Manufacturing sector की growth क्यों नहीं हो पा रही है, कैसे वो resilience उसकी बढ़ सकती है, particularly where manufacturing is now leading towards the higher value segments. It's moving away from low-cost manufacturing to high-value and technology segments, and this is something which we can grow upon. This is something which we don't have a lot. Considering the US-China trade war and also the increasing geopolitical dynamics, India can capture a lot of this segment. How can we capture this segment? What is the government doing in it? In fact, we have a complete chapter on artificial intelligence. It talks about the benefits which we have received in the electronic sector, the PLI scheme. Not just electronic sector, the rationalization of GST, automobile sector has received a significant breakthrough, increasing in growth, the pharmaceutical products, number of things, capital goods, engineering goods, ये improve हो रहे हैं, हमें और इन पे work करना है. This is what exactly we have to work upon. This is how it has been discussed in detail. I'm just giving you a brief overview. Everything has a huge dynamic. इसका क्या इस पे impact है? इस पे फिर what all reforms we need? Because when we talk about the structural growth, they've talked about how entrepreneurial spirit has to be unlocked. और इस entrepreneurial spirit में they talk about the role of the government as an enabler. So the first thing is being talked about the uncertainty, the managed macroeconomics and how exactly further challenges will come and how structural reforms are required. On top of this, they also talk about the social sector in the country. They talk about what exactly is happening in education, how education enrollment is increasing, but we need to work upon improving the quality of education which we are giving across the sectors, whether primary, secondary, and even tertiary. Tertiary, they talked about how we need to focus on the internationalization of education. Hamare students are going outside, but we are not able to get a lot of students from outside in Indian colleges. How do we need to work upon that? Then they talk about the aspect of healthcare. Healthcare mein they talk about moving from curative to preventive healthcare, and also a significant chunk has been devoted to mental health. So all of the evolving things happening in these sectors, last 1 year what has happened and how we can build upon this, how we have to change directions. It talks about skilling. It talks about the infrastructure. And finally, a totality of this, it also mentions rural development, how the expansion has happened in rural consumption, which is why maybe we needed a reform in Manrega, and how the new bill, the G Ramji bill, is trying to cover all of this, which was actually required, changing dynamics in the rural sector. The livability in the cities in India, how do we build more capacity and make the cities livable, considering the huge amount of urbanization that is happening. In totality, along with this, the impact on climate of all of our development and how we are going to go about this. So if you see how exactly it has been structured and how exactly it is in completely overlap or in complete sync with what exactly is the demand of the exam. We talk about the macroeconomics front in a particular geopolitical environment which is no longer considered supportive. How do we use this? We have to work on our strategic resilience. We have to work on the indispensability that we need to have something of our own which cannot be replaced. How do we do that? We talk about the sectoral growth, agriculture, whether we talk about crops and the productivity enhancement in crops. We talk about manufacturing, how we need to have a good base, not in terms of low value manufacturing anymore. Using the low cost labor present in India, we have to work towards better technology because our indispensability has to come from this. In this, they're not just talking about artificial intelligence, they're also talking about how a lot of resources are now, there is a huge fight globally that is going to happen on resource. It talks about how the choke points have to be now these resources. They talk about lithium, they talk about copper, cobalt, the rare earth metals, minerals, all of this, and how we have to deal with this. Considering forward that every technological, whether it is because of climate change or otherwise, we need all of these developments, green hydrogen and all, ye sari cheezein isme they've talked about in manufacturing. Similarly, service resilience coming from where and what next you have to do, especially with respect to job creation. Another chapter which they have added in job creation, they've talked about the profile, how services sector ka growth bahut robust raha hai across the years, but what it has not been able to do is, it has not been able to absorb a lot of jobs. Global capability centers has built us a good export, working on the previous benefits which we had already created, but labor absorption is poor in this sector. So service sector पे नहीं करना rely हो सकता है. अगर indispensability चाहिए, we need it to come from manufacturing. This is something which they've talked about in much detail right from first chapter to covered in these two chapters as well. The entrepreneurial, what exactly is the role of the state? Something related to the economic statecraft and becoming an enabler to allow these sectors to function so that we get both the productivity benefits and job creation. Coming to how this impact is being created on the social sector, what is the livability in the country? Talking about the educational outcomes, the healthcare outcomes, skilling. If people are dropping out, what is the amount of skilling they are getting and what are the different government programs? All of this particular domain, two things why this document becomes all the more important is that the analysis is based on data coming directly from the government sources. And secondly, this data, whatever analysis they're doing, the analysis is quite comprehensive, not leading towards a critical approach. Whatever we read in the newspaper is an analysis presented by experts on the survey where they add their own observations based on what the survey is saying. But if you read the survey cover to cover, try to understand both the concepts and also how they have been interlinked so that you can produce good answers in both paper 2 and paper 3, is that you need to read it on your own. Because a lot of the analysis of the economic survey could also be critical coming from different commentators. So better to read it and try to understand within this whole framework. The key takeaway being, अब जब environment बाहर change हो गया है, हमने macroeconomics stabilize कर भी लिया है, but still we are not being rewarded. So how do we then change the structure? At the same time, how do we then improve the lives of our people? So see, it's a complete story interwoven across 13, 14 chapters, all of them interrelated. Authentic data so that your analysis becomes better and comprehensive in terms of the coverage which has been done. Why I say comprehensive again and again? Because GS2 or GS3 के साथ बहुत linkages हैं इसमें. We are doing it in, I think, 8 to 10 classes along with the budget so that the picture gets more clearer. I think it starts next week. This was just a brief overview. On Monday, I think we have a class. We will talk about some chapters in detail to give an idea, a glimpse of what exactly is going to happen in the next 10 classes. I hope the overview made sense. Thank you.